Excited.
Yeah.
You love this, Dan. This is your life. You love
I
it.
love this. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone, whether you're on the West Coast or the East Coast. Thank you for joining VertiMax VIVE. I'm your host, Dan McDonough, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Michael Piercy, joining us from New Jersey. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, everybody on the call. Appreciate you guys showing up and inviting us into your social media or wherever you might be watching it today.
Yeah, absolutely. So by way of introduction, I got to get rid of the housekeeping, Michael, so people know who you are and what you do. Michael Piercy, on top of being a very, very close friend and confidant, he is the owner of The Lab Sports in New Jersey. He's a former professional baseball player, IDEA Personal Trainer of the Year 2017, TRX Senior Master Trainer, and an author and a speaker. And I could go on and on and on. That's just a small list of all the amazing qualities of this man that we are speaking to today. So again, good morning, Michael Piercy, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that introduction. I'm not sure I'll live up to it, but hey, we got to go. We got to go anyway.
You absolutely do. So, we could probably be here for an hour just touching upon the things I want to chat with you today. But I think more importantly, what I'd love this audience to know is, you transitioned from professional sports and chose to move into the fitness industry. And kind of tell us what that transition was like and how that actually happened.
The funny thing about it is the transition was not really something when you use that word transition is not really, for me, it wasn't an unnatural one because I actually started in the fitness industry at 15. So for me, I got my first job at 15, Bally's Total Fitness, mentoring as a trainer basically. And, the fitness industry was always something that was really central to like my life. So that was how I got my start. So most athletes, like you talk about the baseball stuff, most athletes got I got hurt story. I don't really have one. I can make one up and lie to you if you really want it. I decided to come home and go back to, I was looking at, hey, what am I going to do after? And that was kind of gravitated back towards being, working in this space, wanted to create a place that athletes could actually get most of the coaching that I felt like that I didn't get growing up, not in a negative way, but more so it was some things that I learned from experience that I could offer. But during my career, I kind of was cutting my teeth training different athletes. So I was on teams with a lot of really great athletes. And what I would do is use my fitness background to really just try to make workouts for myself. But I'd have a teammate come up and say, Mike, what you doing today? Do some conditioning work. All right, I'll go with you and do that. And then I would set up bands and do stuff. So I was almost like the center fielder / strength coach for every team I was on anyway. It's the truth. Because in the minor leagues, you really only got, and then if you got a lot of like the performance coaches on, you'll notice on a minor league team when you travel and you really don't have all the coaches that you see on TV when you're watching. So you got like a hitting coach, you got like a pitching coach, you got the manager, and then you got like an athletic trainer that went to school for really cool stuff. And he doesn't do none of that really cool stuff that he went to school for with the team. He like makes peanut butter and jelly, cleans up and like washes your underwear at night while you're at home. But so that dude's not usually the dude you ask to create a strength program because they're working there, grinding as it is. But that was kind of where I started, kind of practicing and working on stuff. So the transition was a very natural one.
It was. Okay. So you said you wanted to, so currently you have the lab in Jersey, and I know you specialize on kind of athletic and strength conditioning for all ages and all athletes of all levels and abilities. No real kind of sports specific, but I know you spend a lot of time working with youth, which is really amazing. So you had mentioned that there was some coaching that you felt that you had missed when you went through the process. And so what was that gap that you saw that needed to be filled, especially with youth athletes that you work with in your facility?
The thing is, we all love, as performance coaches, I think we all love to work with the higher level athletes, elite athletes, and we have the chance to do that too. But it's really just when we look at putting together programs and stuff like that, I think a lot of times we think in the physical space. And for us, it's a lot of things that preparing people for the challenges that they might face when you embarking on this career. So everything we do is like long-term athletic development. And I'm a firm believer in that. I've done some stuff with, ACE, American Council of Exercise, on that, and some other organizations. it's preparing them for a long journey. Nobody remembers who won the MVP in Little League, so it's getting you to understand the different ways that you can help teammates become better, or that you could, I think the great quote that I've seen from somebody is like, uncoachable kids become unemployable adults. And I think that it's so true that like sometimes we can.
Let me rephrase. So uncoachable kids become unemployable. Yeah. All right. Okay. I love that.
It's an interesting quote, right? When you get it. So for us, it's not that's not necessarily something, because that role was played by my father. But the thing is, it's some things that you learn from experience that I wish that we all think that, like, for you, I know cycling and a lot of different things. It's stuff that you know now that you wish you would have known way back then, that it would have been completely different if I knew that back then. So that is really like, try to be the coach that you wish you had when you were younger, and take some of this knowledge that you gained, along your own journey, and how can I impart that with the youth? So that's one of the most important things that we do here, is try to work on the total athlete, not just, we obviously got to work on speed, strength, power, those different things. And try to be great at doing those things, but it's what can we give them that can help them really make a difference, not only just as an athlete, but as a person. If that makes any sense.
It makes complete sense. What do you find the most rewarding with working with youth athletes?
Oh, man. The thing is to see the confidence grow, right? And that's the most important thing. A lot of performance, people will come in from all walks of life. You just never know that, it's the other great quote. Everybody's going through something, so be kind, right? So everybody's got their own battle or own journey they're dealing with. Each kid's coming in with some different stuff. And, unbeknownst to us, they go through stress too. We think that we're just the only ones experiencing stress. But in today's, athletes, field of play, they're doing so much different things. They're coming with a lot of stress. So for us, is to see somebody not only get better physically, from a performance standpoint, but to get better confidence wise. And for me, I obviously have that background in baseball, right? But we don't really do a whole lot. I don't do any like hitting or pitching and stuff like that. The one thing I always wanted in opening the place is I wanted every single kid, youth athlete that shows up to the door to know that, this is a safe place for them to be, that they're loved, and it's not about results. It's about the work that you put in. The only time you'll ever, you get yelled at, but all the time, but you'll get yelled at for your effort, not because you didn't get a hit, not because you didn't score enough runs, not because you didn't get a walk or get a hit in that big spot. So you come in and you know that it's not conditional on what you do as a player. It's really conditional on your effort to try to help yourself improve or to help the people in your group get better. So that's really, when you say that, I hope that answers the question a little bit.
It absolutely does. And I love the fact that, the most rewarding part that you see is that growth in confidence, which we know will transfer to all areas of their life. And I don't know about you, but some of the coaches that I had when I was younger, I still remember them vividly today for something they did to help me, or, something to make me grow. And I think building confidence is going to transfer to all areas of their life. So I think that's amazing. Yeah. What do you find the most challenging aspect of working with youth athletes?
We could go through a lot on that one. I think the most challenging is let's revert back to long-term athletic development again. Yeah, youth athlete schedules now are not what they were when we were kids. When I think about, for me, I played anything that was going on. It was really like, if basketball was going on, I was doing basketball. If baseball was going on, I was doing baseball. I was doing football. So I was doing whatever. Nowadays, I think that it's almost like it's like a weapons race, right? And then parents, try to sign the kids up for so much stuff because other kids are doing it. And I think they feel like that if I'm not doing 17,000 club teams, that I'm going to be left behind. So the most challenging is managing that and trying to have the understanding between not only the youth athlete and the parents that, I think the best analogy we use is this mileage on the car. Like you get a brand new car, like, and you say you drove it all over the world in the first 2 years, you still put mileage on the car, regardless of, if you thought that car was going to last for the next 10 years or next 5 years or whatever it is. The mileage is going to determine how far it goes, right? So with long-term athletic development, is how much mileage are you putting on the car right now, right? So how many innings are you pitching? And I keep going to baseball because that's my background, but it's the same thing in basketball and all the other sports where you look at that we might encounter is how much mileage are we putting on the car at this point, when you're younger, because we want to see these results. We want to see these things. We want to see them go and do exit velos or vertical jumps and things like that, which is, has its place. But for us, the toughest thing is managing that and being able to do a really good job helping them at the same time while not not appearing counterproductive to, what they want to do as an athlete.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. And I can imagine, working with youth athletes for the amount that you do, you're managing the expectations of the youth athlete, but you're also managing the expectations of their parents.
No doubt.
Which I would imagine can be quite challenging, right? There's what the parent thinks and the kid should be doing, and then there's what they should be doing, and trying to put that together must be really like. How often do you have those side conversations with parents about their athletic journey and helping them understand the importance of, the long-term durability of their athletes and not just the immediate short-term reward or success, for lack of a better word?
The funny thing is it's an education thing, and it's almost like you having a new product. And I think you have to temper it with the expectations of you as a parent. You understand, I don't have kids. These are my kids when they come in here, right? But you as a parent, the thing is, for us, it's understanding that they want ultimately what's best for them. So they're doing what they feel like is best for them. The thing is, an education point is trying to educate them on that whole system of long-term athletic development. And I got great parents here that once they really understand it, it's like, yeah, now I get it. And that's when they're bought in. And I often think that one of those things is like, if you're not really with it, you're not going to stay in that system because it's not giving you what you really want, right? Yeah. So it's an education standpoint, and I put that on us. It's like when you're coaching, if we go to the essence of us as fitness coaching. If they can't squat, it's our fault. If they can't do push-ups, it's our fault. So when, you have this disconnect, I think it's, as coaches, performance coaches, is us to try to educate as to why. And for me, it's really that in every essence, I try to be in contact with them as much as possible, because if there's information you can give, or if it's questions that they can have, they're great conversations to have. But I think that once you have that conversation, you have a firm understanding of what long-term athletic development is about. And when we say mileage on the car, you get that. I think that it creates a different conversation. Yeah. So it's, so just a short story, and it's just great to have, like, when you have, nowadays, it's like it's like the combine system exploded. And now you have combines for kids that are 9, they're like 10, and we're measuring stuff at 10. So it's like sitting down with a parent sometimes. It's like, and you're like, two bad things can happen from them going to this thing. One, they could go and really perform poorly, right? And that's what you think of first. But the second thing that could possibly happen is they go and they outperform everybody. And you all of a sudden think that I don't need to work as hard anymore because I'm the fastest 9-year-old in the whole entire world. It's different. So it's, it's a thing about improvement and work and understanding in this process that there's a whole journey we need to go on, and how can we prepare them together as a team, and I think that once you talk to, like I said, we got great parents here. Once, you get an understanding, I think that that's the reason why they come here, is because it's like, all right, now I understand where we're going with this. That I endorse it a little bit, and now I see where you're coming from, and you can see a little bit of a change in that. But that it's tough to manage nowadays, because that's just the nature of the beast. There's all these different places to play, and then if Dan's playing, I want to be playing too. Why aren't I playing so much? So
and to your point, Michael, I think it takes a special individual to be able to manage that relationship from parent to trainer, coach, to the youth athlete, right? Because there's what the youth athlete is going on in this year. You've got the parent going on in this year, and you're trying to be the moderator between the two. So, I know and understand that it's a very special place for you to be. And I think you've created an amazing environment of being able to bridge that gap. Building trust with the parents is ultimately going to lead to trust and growth and development in all areas of that child's life. And so kudos for you for doing that. I know you've put a lot of time. You often drop daily inspirations on Instagram, right? Just these quotes that are really poignant. And I forget how the quote went, but you ought to say, if you don't hear me or see me, that's because I'm doing the work. Yeah. Right. And I know how much work you've done behind the scenes to bring the lab to fruition, and all the challenges that you have faced, even before the pandemic hit, but you've been able to pivot and just do what you need to do to make it happen. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you, brother. You were here on the grand opening, and I always appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We cut the ribbon.
Yeah, absolutely. And so where I want to bring this conversation now, because it kind of relates to not even just being an athlete, it's regardless of what you do for a living, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a group fitness professional, a strength and conditioning coach, you're a banker, whatever it is that you do, you've got this thing that you've talked about called be a playmaker. Mm-hmm. And I got to watch you present your session on being a playmaker at the IDEA Personal Training Institute conference back in March. And it was really profound. And you were able to say, how can you take what you've learned from professional sport and apply it to everyday life? And it's amazing how many sporting analogies can transfer to who we are and what we do today, And so there's 5 key points that you kind of talk about in being a playmaker. And I kind of want to talk about them individually. Okay. I'll list them off really, really quickly for our audience. The first one is embrace your vision. The second one is let your work speak. The third one is know your strengths. The fourth one is mind your words. And I love this one. And the fifth one is coaching is your calling. So let's talk about being a playmaker, and how can you, everyone who's joining us today, how can you be a playmaker in whatever it is that you do? So Mike, let's talk about embrace your vision. So talk to us a little bit about embracing your vision.
Okay, so I'll just back up for a second and then I'll come right back to that. So in the interest of time. But being a playmaker came from my dad. Mm-hmm. And what it was is basically, and a performance coach, this is the best realm ever for this, because they'll get this. It's like, it was like when you did tryouts, right? And then you would do tryouts, and then what you would wait for is they put the list up on the wall when all the players made the team, right? And if
I remember that. You know what? I can't tell you how many times, Mike, my name was not on the
Well, I'm sorry, Dan. It's all good. You made it where you were supposed to go. It's all right. You know what I mean? Yeah. At one point, Michael Jordan, his name wasn't on the list too. So it's all good. And, you guys are in the same realm, so don't worry about it. I love you that much. So, yeah, it was like, all right, you get that list, right? So I remember coming home and you would be so happy to have your name on the list. And my dad used to be like, it's one thing to be happy about having your name on the list, but at some point, that team's going to call for you to do something, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't just be happy to have your name on the list. It's all you're going to be able to make the play that helps the team. Everybody's not always a star. Everybody's not always this, but somebody can always make a play that helps change that game. So life, career, and everything else, it's where can you make the plays that might change things for you or for your athlete, right? So we think about that. That's something that we live. That's our thing. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not enough to just be on the team. It's for us. It's like, hey, what can I do in that moment that's going to help us move forward, right?
That's amazing. And how often for all of us on this call here, how many people do you work with on a daily basis who are grinding behind the scenes, right? They're not the front person. They're not the face person of the brand, but there's always someone behind the scenes that's making things tick. For instance, right now, VertiMax VIVE, we got Jessie behind the scenes. You can't see her, but she's the glue that holds all this stuff together, right? So I think you said in that session I heard, Mike, you said, let's take baseball, for instance, right? There's someone who's the bat boy. There's someone who's getting the towels. There's someone who's filling the water bottle. And if those people weren't there, they wouldn't allow you to make your plays. Mm-hmm. So everyone wins.
If you attack baseball from that, and this one of these things is something I always tell these guys here, that the baseball players that we have, it's like, where do you get the most high fives? It's not when you hit a home run. It's when you get down to sacrifice bunt. That's when everybody gives you the most high fives. When you run the dugout, you're the first guy because you did your job. You got the guy over to the next base. So That's it. So when we think about embrace your vision, and I know you hit me there and I went all over the place on you.
Oh, good. I love it.
But sports is a great metaphor for life. So when I think of Playmaker, it's like, how can we take some things that we learn? So embrace your vision. Everybody will know Jim Valvano from the Jimmy Valvano Cancer, Fund and things like that. And a lot of people, like for me, it was kind of before my time, but I was a kid at the time. But 1983 NC State Wolfpack, he had, they beat Phi Slamma Jamma, which was Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, all these guys. Most of them went on to be like, great players in the NBA, but they didn't have any NBA players on their team. But it's always one of those things when I look at, if it's on 30 for 30, it's never been on 30 for 30 and we haven't watched it in here. If it's on the television, we always watch it because it's just, it's just a profound experience to watch it. And it's how he did it. And one of the things was his vision. He came in as this, crazy, wild coach. And the first thing he says, I'm going to win a national championship. Who says that on their first day of the job? Like, I'm going to win a national championship at North Carolina State, right? And this one thing stood out to me. That was his vision. And he was moving them forward towards that vision. But he used to have practices where they would cut down the nets, where you would cut down the net just like you won the national championship, right? Mm-hmm. So the one thing all his players said in that one documentary, we don't have to go and rehash the whole thing, but one of the things they said, it was almost like we had been there already. Mm-hmm. So when they got into these tough spots, it's like you had been there already. So it's an acronym that, I teach to all these guys, and I didn't make it up. It was taught to me by a pastor, but vision, we break it down into the letters, and it's one, visualize, see your vision for where you are. Internalize, see yourself in the vision. See yourself in there doing it. See yourself doing the thing. See yourself making the play. Strategize, initiate. Because most of the time people come to you, they say, somebody should do this. Somebody should do that. And, you do it. You get it together. You do it. And then it's overcome. Anything you're going to have to go through, you're going to have to overcome obstacles in life. That's just what it is. Everything we do. And here you got to overcome. In sports, you're going to have to overcome. That's that metaphor for life. It's part of it. And the last time, it's got to be something that's necessary for you to do it. Like so many people will say, hey, how should you open a place? It's a tough road to go. Entrepreneurship is tough, but it's something that I think that if your soul's not going to be right unless you do it, I think that you should do it. And so that's kind of where you get with the embrace your vision. So I don't want to get too wordy and go too crazy, but
no, that's okay. So number one, embrace it. I think that whole concept of visualization is incredibly powerful. And I think, especially when you're dealing with young athletes, if you can help to embrace that whole concept of visualization and seeing yourself, where do you want to be in 10 years? Where do you want to be in 15 years? And having them understand the journey and the process. But I love that whole concept of cutting down the net. So you're actually rehearsing.
It's amazing.
For what actually will take place, which I think is incredible. That's really cool. All right, let's move on to the next one. So let your work speak as it relates to being a playmaker.
Yeah. So when we talk about this and in the talk, just so that everybody knows kind of why you keep coming with these. So in the talk, for everything, there's an athletic story that we think about, and then we can apply that to everything we do. So let your work speak, has to do with everybody watch Last Dance, right? And we love Michael Jordan, right? For our era, you watch Michael Jordan. I love Michael Jordan now. As a Knicks fan, he cut my heart out every year. So it's like, but I was there to watch it. So it's interesting. But there's just one story for February 14, 1990. He's playing the Orlando Magic. Mm-hmm. And it's not one of those stories that they shared in there, but his jersey was stolen. And this was back in the day when you didn't travel, you have 7,000 different things. So he has no jersey, right? So they went to the crowd to see if somebody had a Michael Jordan jersey that they could, take from him, and nobody had one, and blah, blah, blah. So he had everybody knows he wore 45 when he came back, but that night he wore number 12 jersey, and it was Valentine's Day, basically, which doesn't mean a whole lot. But that night he scored 49 points. They lost, but I doubt, when I say let your work speak, right? I doubt anybody that was in attendance that night did not know that was Michael Jordan. Everybody knew it, no matter what jersey he was on, and no matter what jersey he had on, no matter what he was doing. His work still spoke for what it said. So now I guess we're in a day, it's such a social media rage that is self-promotion, right? And there's a certain aspect of that. But for us, I think a lot of times it's the work. For me, I always try to think like, at the end of the day, the work that you put out is what your legacy is going to be about. Mm-hmm. So you try to impart that to every athlete. At the end of the day, it's great to do all these things. It's great to get results, great to get accolades. But if you don't, does the work and the body of work that you're putting out still speak for what you want people to see, or what you want people to feel like you are when they approach you, or when, so it's like, hey, do you show up and do your routine? Are you on time? Do you do things? That's your work, and that's really, and we've talked about this a lot. You want, for your body of work to speak for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it kind of spurs right now. One definition of character, Mike, is, the way that you behave and the way that you act when no one is watching.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think you and I both know people who are one way to your face, but they're a different way when they're not, right? And that doesn't speak to, I think, to what we're talking about. But I love that, letting your work speak for itself. I think that's amazing. All right, number 3, know your strengths. So under being a playmaker, we've got embrace your vision, let your work speak, and now we're on to know your strengths. And I think I know where you're going with this one.
Yeah. So usually if you'd have some media set up, we show some videos, and it's cool to watch it. This one's a good one for the videos because when you think about know your strengths, it's interesting because as coaches, right, when people come in the doors, one of the things we want to do is fortify strengths and improve weaknesses, right? Find out the limiting factors. But some people do things really well, and when you do something really well, that's another thing I got from my dad. It's like, for me, I was a speed guy. I stole bases. It was no use to me to be trying to hit home runs. So he would say, God didn't give everybody everything, but he gave everybody something. So you got to learn to use what you got to get what you want.
I love that.
So know your strengths. So when I think about the story, Marshawn Lynch always comes to people. Marshawn Lynch super famous now, but there was controversy when he made the Super Bowl and he wouldn't talk to the media, and the whole country was split. Oh, he gets paid so much. Should he talk to the media? He should be, it's nothing for him to talk to the media. It's back and forth. You can look up all the different vantage points. I always had so much respect for him because I think that he realized, and you watch some of the press conferences later on that are celebrated, he realized that that's not my thing, being in front of it. And a lot of bad things can happen from that. And when you go back, you flip to the video of Allen Iverson. Mm-hmm. Practice, and people, if you watch his documentary, the soundbite that they play has nothing to do with really what his conversation was about. He was saying, something completely different, but people misconstrued it to say that he doesn't really respect practice. So I think that in his mind, I think somehow that might have impacted him. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but it's a good vantage point to look at and say, all right, stick with it. Doesn't mean that you have to not try to improve your weaknesses, but understand what you do really well and how that can make an impact in your life, your career, but also help teams if you're an athlete. How can what I do? For me, it was get on base, steal bases. I was a leadoff guy. That was it. So that's how I help my team. I didn't help my team to get up there, strike out 47 times because I'm trying to hit one home run. So,
and that's so interesting that you talk about knowing your strengths, because I can certainly attest early on in my career that I thought being a jack of all trades and master of none was going to serve me better, right? I thought the more balls I was juggling, the more work and more productive I was going to be. Mm-hmm. Well, fast forward, it's now the completely opposite. You talk about only if I would have known. And I think earlier on in our careers as fitness professionals and strength and conditioning coaches, we need to expose ourselves and look at everything. But at some point, to obtain mastery, right, to be the best at what you can be in those one or two things, it's only going to serve you well later on in your career. There's no need, I think right now it's like, hey, if I don't know, I'm going to refer or defer. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I think one of the biggest things that at least I can attest to is having the ability to say no, knowing that, what, actually you working with this other coach might actually be better for you as a person and a career. So I think knowing your strengths is humbling, but it really speaks to character too as well. So you talked about you were known for stealing bases.
Oh, wow.
I want you to talk, when you received your IDEA Personal Trainer of the Year award in 2017, and your mother was in the crowd, which I thought was incredibly powerful, and I know it was very emotional to you. And you were telling the story about stealing bases and talking to your mom on the phone about that. So share that story when you were talking to your mom about stealing bases.
Oh no, yeah, my mother knows people. Some people, it's like, for me, sports parents is different. I didn't have like a sport parent. Like for me, my dad was a ball player, but he was a truck driver, long haul truck driver. And my mom was a social worker. She knew nothing about baseball whatsoever.
Yeah.
So she's, I was on the phone telling her we talking about drafting, like calling her on the day of the draft, telling her I'm going to get drafted. She's like, all right, when you guys get done drafting, make sure you take out the garbage, and hung up on me basically. and then, at another time, she's like, oh, well, I heard you stealing a lot of bases. If you're going to be stealing bases, make sure if you get locked up, make sure the cops don't call me, because you're going to stay in there. And I'm like, trying to explain to her was worthless about anything.
Oh, that's hilarious. I thought you were stealing bases. I love that. That's amazing.
So when you think about it, the way we impart it to kids is like, what's your superpower? What's your superpower? You don't have everybody's powers. What do you do that helps? So, all the Avengers, everybody, you got stuff you do really well. If it ain't your power, don't be messing around with it. But
and I think that's why some of the best teams in the world have no problem employing somebody for their special skill, for their strength. Like, you are a pinch hitter, you are a base stealer, you are special teams, right? And, teams realize that there's so many pieces to a fantastic puzzle that helps teams become playmakers and win championships.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean don't improve your weaknesses. So don't misconstrue that.
Absolutely
keep working on everything, but it's some stuff that you do really well, that you do better than anybody in the world. And if that's what you can do, rock with it, baby.
And Mike, you are the best at giving hugs.
Wow, definitely not. It's definitely not my superpower, but it's yours.
All right, number 4, mind your words. So when you're talking about being a playmaker, what do you mean by minding your words?
Your words have power, right? Before anything else, there was the word, right? Whether you're, a devout believer or not, before anything, there was the word, right? So when you look at it, I always illustrate this story of like Bill Buckner and Ronda Rousey have two completely different eras, right? But as a Mets fan, like 1986 takes you to like, if you got young people on the call, go Google it. But 1986 showed me my emotional arc in about 30 seconds of how I could be extremely sad and then completely happy in the same thing. So it's like New York Mets, Bill Buckner, Mookie Wilson hits the ground ball, goes through Bill Buckner's legs. You go from seeing the ground ball dribbled and thinking it's an out and being sad that the World Series is over to like jumping up from wherever you were because it went through his legs and they scored. But the interesting thing about that is Bill Buckner gave an interview where he actually beforehand mentioned that that's probably the worst thing could happen, where he said the worst thing happens is a ball goes through your legs and you lose. Flash forward many, many years later, you would think it would never happen again, but Ronda Rousey's on a talk show and she says the worst thing that could happen is she's going to try to, get me, in a position where she can kick me in the head, knock me out, but that's not going to happen. If you go back and look at the video, guess what happened later on? Mm-hmm. She got kicked in the head, done. So we show the video and you see the different things. How can we learn from that? It's one thing is you speak certain things into existence, and that's what you want. I'll often have a youth athlete come in and they say, oh, well, I'm not doing very good. It's like, don't tell yourself that. You know what I mean? I once had I won't mention his name, but Hall of Fame guy I was on team with, and he once told me, after getting thrown out by an umpire when we were playing, he said, sometimes you got to do that. He's like, sometimes when people get thrown out, it's not about like, it's not really because the umpire made really a bad call. It's because you got to play every day. I got to play tomorrow. Somehow I got to convince myself that I'm not as bad as I am today. And I'm really that bad, but if he's that bad, then that means it really is not me. So I got to convince myself. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's always speak positive stuff to yourself. You believe it no matter what. So it's how do your words have power, right? The way you view things, and in big moments, you don't want to speak poor things into existence. So we try to be as positive as we can. And that's stuff that we do. I guess all fitness people, we think we're all motivational speakers. So it's all good.
No, absolutely. There's that whole concept of be careful what you wish for and what you speak into existence, right? Yeah. And so not only what you tell yourself, Michael, but especially working with youth athletes, the words that you say to them, right? You said something at the beginning of this that, there's going to be yelling going on in here, but it's yelling going on for what you're doing well, not what you're doing badly or poorly, right? And our words are so powerful, specifically when we're dealing with youth athletes, because they're very vulnerable. They may on the surface may think they're strong and they got it all together, But I remember those, you know, I remember not seeing my name on the wall when I didn't make, you know, the football team in high school. And it's what the coach said to me afterwards that made the difference for me, right? You know, it wasn't this, you know, it was just, so I love that, minding your words, you know, be careful what you wish for and speak into existence, but not only the self-talk you've got going on in your head, Michael, but what we say to our clients, what we say to our athletes. And we really have to be very, very careful, because words, you know, words can last forever.
Yeah. And so just to jump on what you said, it's one of those things where when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And that's one of those things, right? And then throughout my career, when you go back to saying, well, what am I trying to do that I didn't have back then? And I did have great coaches at every, you know, during a career and during a journey, and whether it be sport or whatever it is, you're going to go through some really tough spots. And for me, I think that I went through a lot of tough spots, but I always had somebody, there would always be a coach that would come that could always, give me a kind word or a positive word or work with me. You know what I mean? It's like when I was with the Pittsburgh Pirates my first year, I had Ben Ogilvy, who was, you know, who would go out to the side, and I really wasn't, you know, quite ready to be there yet. He would spend time with me. And then on others is, you know, Tony Beasley, who's now a major league coach, and he would spend time with me. And then you would have people from, you know, from the time when I was with the Mets, Howard Johnson, and, you know, with the Expos, Lance Johnson, and people like that, that always would jump in and be able to say some things. So you just hit it right on the head. And the journey from being a kid, you always remember that coach that, you know, for me, all the way back to kid, I always remember my first Little League coach. I'm still in contact. He was at my grand opening, Ray Taylor. You know, Ray Taylor didn't have a kid on the team. He worked nights and he did everything, but he was always there. His interest was solely, it was never, no matter what I did, I never want a kid to walk out feeling like he doesn't like me or they don't love me. You know, no matter what the day's session might have been like. No matter whether he was getting on me or he yelled at me or whatever it is, I never felt like it's because he doesn't love me. You know, he's doing the best, you know. So that's what you want. You want the coaching. You never know. People remember, you know, and then it has an impact, and it's how they move forward, and that's how we, you know. Yeah. So that'll lead us into the next one, I guess. I think.
The last one is coaching is calling.
Yeah, coaching is a calling, and that's the thing. You know, we're in this big thing right now where it's like, all right, personal training or coaching, and one isn't bad, the other one's not bad. You know what I mean? It's just different. And I think that you graduate to coaching because you have to have something that you have to give. I think that it's more so than it's coaching is more than how do you swat or how do you do things. You have to have something that you're giving, right? That you want.
I think we know, right? Sometimes the best players don't make the best coaches.
No, because the reason for that, I believe, is because, you know, Michael Jordan has something that he can turn on that everybody doesn't have. And he doesn't know how every great athlete's got something they do really well, and you don't really know how it works. It just works when you do it. Like Dion, for some, he can flip the switch, and then all of a sudden he's in turbo boost speed. You know, it just happens like that, you know. Now you can clean up for them and do things, but somebody got something that they do really well, and you don't really understand how it works. It's like, I'm gonna date myself here. It's like, you remember The Greatest American Hero?
Oh yeah,
yeah. That was like my favorite superhero, but he lost the instructions for the superhero suit because he couldn't really fly quite right, and he couldn't do everything, you know. But it works when he needs it to work, and he didn't really know how the suit worked, but he would do all this stuff, and it's kind of like that in a way. So you don't always make the best coaches because they didn't have to go through all the arcs of having to work so hard to get there. So you know what the difference is of the things you need to do. And then you have something to give to somebody. I think that's really what it is. You have to have a philosophy. You have to have a philosophy of something you're trying to impart, I believe. So we think about coaching as a calling. I always think back to this story that I don't know if it was my father or uncle that told me this story, and I did some research, and it was true. And then we all know Muhammad Ali, but we all know before he was Cassius Clay, right? So, and we all know the big Sonny Liston fight, all right? And everybody will remember him jumping on the ropes, and I shocked the world and blah, 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 and everything else, right? Great moment for him. But what's not really talked about is he almost quit in that fight around round 4 and 5. He got something in his eyes, and he asked, his corner man to cut the gloves off. I can't see. And he told him, no, I'm not cutting the gloves off, dance. You know, he danced and made it through the round. And then all of a sudden was able to clear it from his eyes. And we all watched we didn't watch it. That's probably before most of our time, but we know what happened at the end, right? But I always think, what would have happened if he actually would have cut the gloves off for him, right? So in that moment, he was where he was supposed to be. That was his calling. That was where he was supposed to be in that moment. In that moment, we would have all never known who Muhammad Ali was had he cut the gloves off and allowed him to quit. So it's for us, what can we? That's something that was something in that moment that was more powerful than anything, because he was right where he was supposed to be in that time, right? It sent chills down your spine. So when I think of coaching as a calling, is where is that moment for us working with youth athletes or any type of athlete, or even, you know, your elite athlete? Where is that moment for us in that space? And for us, if we're cognizant of that on a daily basis and wherever you are in life and sport or in business or whatever it is, it'll change the way you do things, right? So it's like, it'll change the way, because you see, like, in that moment right there, I look at it, it's like, you could be impactful and powerful right there. And he was, you know what I mean? Everybody will remember Muhammad Ali, but not so many people remember Angelo Dundee as much as they remember.
You know, and sometimes that, you know, Mike, to your point, that calling, that moment for you to make a difference, it may not be in the gym. It may not be on the court. It could be in the locker room. It could be in the changing room. It could be in the parking lot before or after. It could be you're at the grocery store and you see your athlete in there, you know, with the, you know, I think it's that level of awareness, Mike, which I certainly didn't have when I was younger in my career. It's like everything happened within the four walls of the gym, and that's all that mattered to me. It didn't really later on my career that understand that it's those relationships that you build that's going to build adherence, and for lack of a better word, that's going to keep them a client for life. It's not the act of just the 1 hour you spend with them that day. It's how you interact and go about the earth and just have open eyes. Instead of here, we're here, right? You're looking for that opportunity, not just to be a playmaker, so to speak, but to have that point of difference, and it could be anywhere. And I think it's truly special, a coach, right? Because sometimes the best players won't be best coaches, but sometimes the not so great players become the best coaches.
No doubt. And the thing is, it is making a play, right? And that's situation you made a play. So it's like, for us, we love to watch, like, we'll go back to Last Dance. It was great. We love to look at it, and it's like, for a lot of people, you look at it and it'll be about Michael Jordan. But when you look at it from a coaching perspective, it's like, how dope is Phil Jackson? You know, when you look at Kobe Bryant and you'll watch numerous documentaries about Kobe Bryant, you watch
rest in peace. Yes.
Yep. Rest in peace, Michael Jordan. Those guys, fantastic at what they do, right? Yeah. They won how many championships? How many did they win without Phil Jackson? None. And the thing is, for him, I went out right after watching, and it's like I bought his book because I just wanted to to manage all the different personalities as coaches coming into our different facilities, doing different things. How many different personalities did you have to manage? And for him, it would have been easy to try to say, hey, to try to fit everybody into this one box, but he did it, you know, and it's such a masterful thing that he did in that time. That's making a play. You know what I mean? It's making a play, realizing that, hey, Dennis Rodman is crazy. You know, how can I have a great relationship with him that makes him the biggest weapon that we got?
How can we embrace his craziness and put him where he needs to be a playmaker? Boom.
And that's what you got to do. For me, and we're talking about youth mostly, but, you know, for every person that comes through the doors here, they're different people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody's got a different challenge. Each athlete's got something different. Some people, hey, they're superstars at what they did, you know, where they are right now. Some kids are just trying to scuffle to make the first team, you know what I mean? And then, you know, some people are coming in and they're executives or corporate folks, and they're doing, you know, people come from all walks of life. It's how can we borrow and extract from that? That's part of your calling, but that's making a play. It is, you know.
I love it. Yeah, that's amazing. Mike, we could continue this conversation all day long, and we may actually have to have a part 2, right? Because we can literally just sit here and chat all day long. But I kind of want to summarize for our audience what what some takeaways for me are today, or for everyone who's on here, is that regardless of what your role is in this industry, right, you all have teams that you work with. There's people behind the scenes, there's people in front of, wherever it may be, right? How can you be a playmaker in your organization, right? Regardless of what it is that you do, right? It takes a team to not only win championships, if we're talking about a sporting analogy, but it takes a team to get through a pandemic. It takes a team to complete a project. It takes teams to understand and pursue innovation, regardless of what it is that you do out there, right? How can you be a playmaker, and how can you recognize who to put where in order for your team to succeed? So embrace your vision, let your work speak for itself, know your strengths, mind your words, which is very powerful. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you put into existence. And coaching is a calling, which I completely agree. And Mike, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your wisdom with us. I mean, I can tell this group that's on here today that Mike has become a very, very close friend and a confidant. We often have very many side conversations about anything and everything. And he's been a rock for me during this pandemic. And I hope in some way, shape, or form, I've been able to be some sort of rock for him. But Michael, I'm looking forward to working with you and deepening our friendship and our relationship as decades go on, and for as much as we hassle and take the piss out of each other, it's all in good fun. Because if you can't do that with your best friends, then who can you do it with? So
no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Michael Piercy from the lab in New Jersey live. Thank you for joining us, Michael. And again, guys, go out there, be a playmaker, right? Recognize who you are, who you work with, put the right people in the right place. And it truly, truly, truly takes a team of people for any organization to succeed, whether it's in sport, health and fitness, or whatever it is that you do. So Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. And I think we might have to dive in, because I love this. You finished off your playmaker conversation with, which I want to dive into later, is called being the general manager of your life.
Oh yeah.
Really deep. So that could be a whole separate talk for us. So thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate you being real, appreciate who you are, and continue to do great things out there in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Until next time, I'm Dan McDonough with VertiMax VIVE.
Thank you.